I was a daring adventurer who craved solitude and the thrill of the unknown. I decided to embark on a solo camping trip by the seaside, far from civilization. The idea of the serene ocean waves and the vast starry sky was too enticing to resist. As I set up my tent on the soft, white sand, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the water. The rhythmic sound of the waves was calming, and I felt a deep sense of peace. I built a small fire and settled in for the night, enjoying the crackling flames and the gentle breeze carrying the salty scent of the sea. As darkness enveloped the beach, I noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The waves, once soothing, now seemed to carry a whisper, a faint murmur that grew louder with each passing minute. I brushed it off as my imagination and tried to focus on the beauty of the night. But the whispers persisted, and they seemed to be calling my name. A chill ran down my spine as I turned to see a shadowy figure standing at the water's edge. The figure was indistinct, almost translucent, and it seemed to be watching me. I called out, but the figure remained silent, its gaze fixed on me. I felt a surge of fear, but my curiosity kept me rooted to the spot. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. My heart pounded as I realized they were not coming from the waves, but from the figure itself. "Come closer," it beckoned. Against my better judgment, I found myself moving towards the figure, drawn by an inexplicable force. As I neared the figure, I noticed its eyes, glowing with an eerie light. The whispers intensified, and I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. "You belong to the sea," the voice hissed. I tried to pull away, but the grip tightened, and I felt myself being dragged towards the water. In a panic, I managed to break free and stumbled back to my tent. I quickly packed my things, but in my haste, I realized my flashlight was missing. The darkness seemed to close in around me, and the whispers were now all around, echoing in my mind. Just as I was about to flee, a beam of light cut through the night. A group of local fishermen had seen my fire and came to investigate. They rushed to my aid, and as they approached, the shadowy figure vanished into thin air. The whispers ceased, leaving only the sound of the waves. The fishermen explained that the beach was known for its haunted past, where sailors lost at sea were said to return as ghostly apparitions, seeking to claim more souls for the ocean. I thanked the fishermen for their timely rescue and vowed never to camp alone by the sea again. As I drove away from the beach, the haunting whispers still echoed in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that the sea was watching me, waiting for another chance to claim me. And as the fishermen's stories lingered in my thoughts, I wondered what other secrets the ocean held, hidden beneath its whispering waves. One summer, I decided to spend a weekend camping alone by the seaside. I loved the solitude and the chance to unwind with the sound of the waves as my only company. I chose a remote stretch of beach, far from the usual tourist spots, to set up my camp. As the sun set, I built a fire and settled down with a book, enjoying the peaceful evening. The stars began to twinkle in the clear sky, and the rhythmic sound of the waves lulled me into a sense of tranquility. But as the night grew darker, an eerie feeling began to creep over me. I heard soft footsteps on the sand, but when I looked around, there was no one in sight. I dismissed it as my mind playing tricks on me and returned to my book. However, the sense of unease grew stronger, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Suddenly, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the water, illuminated by the moonlight. The figure was tall and thin, with a pale, ghostly appearance. My heart raced as I called out, but the figure did not respond. Instead, it slowly turned and began to walk towards me. Panic set in as I scrambled to my feet. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it towards the figure, but it had vanished. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what I had seen. I decided it was best to leave and started packing my belongings as quickly as I could. As I hurriedly stuffed my things into my backpack, I felt a cold breeze brush against my neck. I turned around to see the figure standing right behind me, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "You cannot leave," it whispered. "You belong to the beach now." Terrified, I backed away, but the figure followed my every move. I stumbled and fell, and the figure loomed over me, its presence suffocating. Just when I thought I was doomed, a sudden flash of light appeared. A group of locals, out for a nighttime stroll, had noticed my campfire and came to investigate. The figure disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving me shaken but safe. The locals helped me gather my things and offered to escort me back to the nearest town. They told me stories of the beach's haunted past, where a shipwreck had claimed many lives, and the spirits of the lost sailors were said to wander the shore, searching for the living to join them. I thanked my rescuers and vowed never to camp alone by the beach again. As I left the beach behind, I couldn't help but feel a lingering presence, as if the spirits of the lost sailors were still watching, waiting for another chance to claim a soul. The haunting memory of that night stayed with me, a reminder of the mysteries that lurked in the darkness of the seaside. During a warm summer night, I decided to take a break from my hectic city life and go camping alone by the seaside. The idea of composing music with the ocean waves as my backdrop was too tempting to resist. I chose a secluded spot far from any distractions and set up my tent. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I pulled out my guitar and began to play, the soothing sound of the waves providing the perfect accompaniment. The sky turned a deep shade of blue, and the stars began to appear, creating a magical atmosphere. I played until the night fully enveloped the beach, then sat by my fire, enjoying the peaceful solitude. But as the night grew darker, I began to feel an unsettling presence. The gentle melody of the waves seemed to shift, carrying with it a haunting tune that I couldn't quite place. I brushed it off as my imagination and continued to play my guitar. However, the eerie feeling persisted, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I paused and looked around, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Determined to enjoy my night, I resumed playing, but the haunting melody grew louder, more distinct. It was as if someone else was playing along with me, an invisible duet partner. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized the music was coming from the water. I stood up and walked towards the shore, my heart pounding. As I reached the water's edge, I saw a figure standing waist deep in the ocean, illuminated by the moonlight. The figure was playing a violin, the haunting melody blending with the sound of the waves. I called out, but the figure did not respond, its focus entirely on the music. The eerie tune grew louder, and I felt an overwhelming urge to join in. I began to play my guitar again, unable to resist the pull of the melody. The music swirled around me, and I felt as if I was being drawn into the ocean. The figure beckoned me, and I found myself wading into the water, the cold waves lapping at my legs. As I got closer, I saw the figure's eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light. "You belong to the music of the sea," it whispered. I tried to pull away, but the music had me in its grip. I felt myself being dragged deeper into the water, the haunting melody filling my mind. Just as I thought I would be lost to the ocean, a bright light cut through the darkness. A group of fishermen, out for a night catch, had seen my campfire and came to investigate. They rushed to my aid, pulling me from the water. The figure vanished, and the haunting melody ceased, leaving only the sound of the waves. The fisherman explained that the beach was known for its haunted past, where a musician had drowned at sea, and his spirit was said to lure the living to their doom with his music. I thanked the fishermen for their timely rescue and vowed never to camp alone by the seaside again. As I drove away, the haunting melody still echoed in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that the spirit was still out there, waiting for another chance to claim a soul. The memory of that night stayed with me, a reminder of the mysterious and eerie power of the sea. One summer, I decided to take a solo camping trip to a secluded seaside spot I had read about. The area was known for its historic lighthouse, which had stood guard over the treacherous waters for centuries. The idea of camping near such a picturesque and historic location was irresistible. I arrived in the late afternoon, setting up my tent on a grassy knoll with a clear view of the lighthouse and the ocean beyond. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows and a warm golden light over everything. As I gathered driftwood for a fire, I noticed how peaceful and quiet the place was. The only sounds were the gentle crashing of waves and the distant calls of seagulls. As night fell, I lit my fire and sat down to enjoy the tranquility. The lighthouse's beams swept methodically across the water, its light a comforting presence in the growing darkness. I felt a deep sense of calm, letting the sound of the waves and the flickering fire lull me into relaxation. However, as the night grew darker, an unsettling feeling began to creep over me. The lighthouse's light, which had been steady and reassuring, seemed to flicker oddly. I dismissed it as an old structure with quirks and tried to focus on the beauty of the night. But the feeling of unease persisted. Suddenly, I heard a faint, rhythmic knocking sound. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the lighthouse. I stood up and strained my ears, trying to pinpoint the source. The knocking grew louder and more insistent, sending chills down my spine. I decided to investigate, hoping to quell my growing fear. As I approached the lighthouse, the knocking stopped abruptly. I felt a rush of cold air, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I looked around, but there was no one in sight. The lighthouse stood silent and imposing, its light sweeping across the dark waters. I took a deep breath and walked up to the entrance, which was ajar. The inside was dark and musty, the air thick with the scent of salt and age. I shone my flashlight around, revealing old equipment and crumbling walls. The knocking started again, louder this time, echoing through the narrow staircase that spiraled up to the top. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs, the sound growing louder with each step. As I reached the top, I saw a shadowy figure standing by the lighthouse's lens. It was a tall, gaunt man, his face hidden in darkness. He turned slowly to face me, and I froze in place. His eyes glowed with a ghostly light, and he raised a hand to point at me. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice carrying an otherworldly echo. "This place is not for the living." Terrified, I backed away, stumbling down the stairs in my haste to escape. The knocking sound followed me, growing louder and more frantic. I burst out of the lighthouse and ran back to my campsite, my heart racing. I quickly packed my things, determined to leave as fast as possible. As I was about to leave, a group of fishermen appeared, drawn by the sight of my fire. They saw my panic and asked what had happened. I told them about the figure in the lighthouse, and they exchanged knowing glances. One of them explained that the lighthouse was said to be haunted by the spirit of a keeper who had perished in a storm, forever bound to his post. They helped me gather my things and escorted me to their boat, offering to take me to safety. As we sailed away, I looked back at the lighthouse. Its beam continued to sweep across the water, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw the figure standing by the lens, watching us leave. I thanked the fishermen for their help and vowed never to camp alone near the lighthouse again. As I lay in my bed that night, the events replayed in my mind. The haunting image of the lighthouse keeper and the eerie knocking sound stayed with me, a reminder of the mysterious and unsettling power of the sea and its guardians.